I was always a very curious young person. Everything that had to do with imagination is very connected to nature, to our past, to our traditions, and it's beautiful to embrace that. Let the world see it, let the world judge it, read it, perceive it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for, taking a little time of your busy life to hang out with me here a little bit. I think it'll be really fun to get to know me, know my work, know the process, and how I came about doing what I'm doing, which is what I always wanted to do since I was very, very young. I'm born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico. Do you all know more or less where it is? In the Caribbean. I have a studio in New York, a studio in Puerto Rico. I live in between both places.
When exactly was the first moment that you realized your passion for art, and how did you turn that passion into a career?
I was always a very curious young person, curious about what films spoke to me, books, art, painting, writing, poetry, just everything that had to do with imagination and in the process of executing your curiosity or what you want to express. I was maybe 12. It was my first visit to a museum, and I saw this painting by an artist called Arnaldo Rocha Rabel, Puerto Rican artist. The painting had so much oil paint. It had this way of painting that I couldn't understand, but it looked incredible. I couldn't explain myself, how it felt to be in front of it. And I think that was the first time, because I had heard that museums only have real famous, important artists that, that do that as their career. It is very important to me. Even now, I have a daughter, she's 11. But when I was her age is when I started trying to figure out what is my life around me, Question myself. And it's not like, making art for me has not been just a way of me telling everyone my childhood. It's something also of a reflection and in a sort of question of who am I today?
Do you think that you'd focus less on your childhood and move more into your adulthood through your art?
I don't know, but I've been very conscious of that. Like, where am I standing today? Where am I standing when I'm in the studio? I have a tendency to, instead of stopping and trying to go too, in a rough way, against the wave, if you may say, I like to be organic. It's been many years me connected to my past. It has been always my influence. I always keep going back to those references.
I've heard of plexiglass, but I don't really know what it is. And so on the little video that's displayed out front, I saw it was kind of like really floppy, like canvasy, and I was like, no way, that's glass. So is it glass or just?
Plexiglass is kind of it's a plastic.
Oh, okay.
Plastic/acrylic sometimes, and it's more meant to be, to kind of use the same purpose as a big glass, but it just doesn't break. It's more durable and safer. So I've been using it for my surfaces. There's no plexi here.
Oh, okay.
Keep back. That's the thing. The process is very tricky. It starts painting on a plexi, but I scrape the paint off the plexi. The plexi stays in my studio. But then that painting I scraped, when painting is bubbly in the wall and you scrape it out and you peel it, kind of like that. So then that peeling out is what I collage in the canvas. When I entered grad school, I started exploring with my materials. Within the materials in my little studio in Chicago, those little sheets of glass, I never cleaned, so they had stains of colors. So when I put a new color to do the same thing, when I scraped it for the second time, the skin of paint had this imprinted version of the stains to perfection, like a perfect impression. So that moment was kind of an aha moment in school. And I have a sheet of paint that has a painting that I can collage, and it's sculptural, and it's a print. And I'm still like, whoa, this is pretty wild. Like, this is something quite unique. It's interesting, it's challenging. I can still paint the things that I want, abstract, figurative. And I just literally went super obsessed in that journey of figuring out this process.
And that's what's transferred on there.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is all this, and you see the seam here, this little seam here. This is a paint, these paintings or the skins of paint that I scraped or pulled out from the acrylic, now collage on canvas.
When collaging, and I know you work on plexiglass, how many times have you had to remake a certain object or?
A bunch of times, but keep in mind that I also like when things don't come out like I expected. So maybe something came out broken, ugly looking, smudgy, blurred, and they might work. Not always, but they might work. So I tend to try to give a chance to some of these things. But yeah, it's very intuitive, you know? It's like I'm constantly trusting myself and fighting with myself, if that makes sense.
I have a question regarding your process on making these pieces. Did you yourself weld the frame for these pieces?
No, I had help with someone in Mexico. I'm not good at welding. So that's something important. You know, we always think that when we make art, we're this enclosed person in a room and a little crazy, and you're working on something and nobody can touch it. Oh, there's something way bigger than that. And it has been for years. This is not something like, it's not Michelangelo didn't sit there in the top and painted the Sistine Chapel on its own. They all needed help. That the idea mainly maybe comes from this one individual, yeah, but having help in the studio is something that can also bring in this humbleness about how you perceive art. You know, if some other artists might have this factory, that's a whole different concept. That's not in here. But in the case of the sculptures, I had a welder who helped me, but I had to be there to explain to him what it is because he doesn't understand. The same with the ceramic people; they have never put metal in the kiln, so I had to explain to the ceramic people. I'm like, well, this is the reason I'm doing this.
Do you feel like the cracks that were caused by the firing of the ceramics, do you feel like they're a huge part of your narrative and they display what you want them to
Yes,
display?
100%. They are. They are. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to see it and say, it's broken. But it's broken just because we have always had the perception that something that is cracked is broken. But, you know, it can be translated in different ways. And for me, the gesture of the cracking is something that goes back to that, what I was explaining about taking the two materials and fighting with each other. These are the gestures, the same with the paintings. You see, the paintings have a lot of texture, and sometimes, I'm gonna show you, come on. When I'm scraping the paint off the glass, I have accidents where the painting, sometimes the fabric breaks and exposing this sort of holes that shows the canvas. And in those moments, I painted those eyes. Because I thought like, I know in Hollywood and books, we see those like this scary film with the paintings following the person. But I actually thought it would be cool because of the idea of playfulness. They can be translated as if someone is hiding behind the paintings in a way of hide and seek, not necessarily of, you know, anything spooky. So from that perspective, I really started making these eyes in some of these accidents.
You make a lot of associations like with objects and people that are important to you.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering like what helped you make those along with the memories that you're like recounting?
I started building these imageries of back home. You know, my house that I grew up and my grandma in many ways became my inspiration. But I think as I grow and now being a father and spending time with my daughter, the perspectives are changing in some way. And yeah, as an artist, I think it's important for me to step back a little bit and see what that means to me.
I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about the title of the show?
The title of the show, which is First Rain in May, is connected to a saying where like I was supposed to go in the first rain in May outside to play in the rain for good luck. So my grandma will obligate me to get wet with her in the street. And this was a sign of good luck for all of us in the family. You know, being Latino has been embracements of things that you need to believe in, even if you don't get them. And you know, your past relatives don't care if you don't. You know, this is who we are. And there is, to me, a beautiful romantic element to that. That you know, for some other people might seem like, well, they are crazy. You know, they Latino, they la. But I think it's very poetic. I think it's very connected to nature, to our past, to our traditions, and it's beautiful to embrace that. You know, and I also felt that it connected a lot with surrealism and magical realism. So I felt because the show, it was in May, although it's now the end of May and it has rained a lot, you know, since early May. I thought it was a good fit for it and also playful.